What if the foods your doctor told you were healthy are quietly damaging your brain? Not junk food, not fast food. We're talking about the foods sitting in your kitchen right now, the ones with words like natural, heart healthy, and low fat on the label. Here's what the latest neuroscience is revealing. A landmark 2023 study published in Nature Metabolism followed over 3,000 adults aged 60 and older for 7 years. Researchers found that chronic insulin spikes, triggered specifically by certain foods, were directly associated with accelerated cognitive decline. The participants who consumed the highest amounts of these foods were 67% more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease than those who avoided them. The connection between blood sugar, insulin, and brain health is now one of the most researched areas in neurology. In fact, some researchers at Johns Hopkins have begun referring to Alzheimer's as, quote, a metabolic disease of the brain. The brain depends on a steady, regulated supply of glucose. When that supply becomes erratic because of what we eat, neurons suffer, inflammation increases, and the structures responsible for memory begin to deteriorate. Today we're going to show you 7 foods that are aggressively marketed as healthy, especially to seniors, but that research now links to exactly this kind of brain inflammation. And for every food on this list, we'll give you a real evidence-based alternative that protects your cognition instead of harming it. Stay until number 1. The research behind it will completely change how you read a nutrition label. Pre-list credibility bridge. Before we begin, let us explain the core mechanism so that everything on this list makes complete sense. Your brain is your most metabolically active organ. It consumes roughly 20% of your body's total energy, despite representing only 2% of your body weight. It runs primarily on glucose, but the key word is regulation. When you eat something that causes a rapid spike in blood glucose, your pancreas releases a surge of insulin to manage it. Over time, repeated insulin spikes cause something called insulin resistance, where your cells, including brain cells, stop responding to insulin properly. The brain essentially loses its ability to fuel itself efficiently. This process triggers neuroinflammation, damages the blood-brain barrier, and accelerates the buildup of amyloid plaques, which are the same plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease. A 2022 review in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease analyzed 19 independent studies and concluded that insulin resistance in the brain is present in over 80% of Alzheimer's patients. Item 7. Flavored yogurt. Number 7. Flavored yogurt. Walk down any grocery aisle and you'll see yogurt marketed with images of fresh berries, words like probiotic, bone health, and heart smart. For decades, yogurt has been positioned as one of the healthiest foods a senior can eat, but there's a critical distinction the marketing never makes. Plain yogurt, particularly full-fat or Greek yogurt, genuinely is beneficial. It contains protein, calcium, healthy fats, and live bacterial cultures that support gut health. The gut-brain axis, which is the bidirectional communication pathway between your digestive system and your brain, depends in part on a healthy microbiome. That part is real. The problem is flavored yogurt. A standard 6-ounce container of flavored low-fat yogurt contains between 17 and 26 grams of added sugar. That is more sugar than a glazed donut. The low-fat label makes it worse, not better, because removing fat requires adding sugar and thickeners to maintain palatability. A 2021 study in the British Journal of Nutrition found that regular consumption of high-sugar dairy products was associated with significantly higher markers of systemic inflammation in adults over 60, including elevated C-reactive protein, which is one of the primary indicators of neuroinflammation. The alternative: switch to plain Greek yogurt, full fat if possible, and add your own toppings. Half a cup of plain Greek yogurt with a handful of blueberries and a tablespoon of walnuts gives you probiotics, protein, healthy fat, and genuine antioxidants with a fraction of the glycemic impact. This combination specifically, berries with fat and protein, has been shown to slow glucose absorption and reduce the insulin response significantly. Item 6. Granola. Number 6. Granola. Granola is perhaps the most successful health marketing story of the last 50 years. It sounds rustic, natural, wholesome, and yet a half-cup serving of most commercial granolas contains between 12 and 24 grams of sugar, often from a combination of honey, brown rice syrup, cane sugar, and dried fruit. Here's what makes granola particularly problematic for brain health. It combines 3 ingredients that independently spike insulin: refined oats, added sugars, and dried fruit. Dried fruit is essentially concentrated fructose. A small handful of raisins, which are commonly added to granola, contains the glycemic equivalent of eating multiple tablespoons of sugar in minutes. Research from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2020 demonstrated that meals with a high glycemic load, meaning foods that rapidly raise blood glucose, were associated with measurable reductions in hippocampal activity. The hippocampus is the brain region most directly associated with memory formation and one of the first areas damaged in Alzheimer's disease. Additionally, most commercial granolas are made with refined vegetable oils like sunflower or canola oil, which are high in omega-6 fatty acids. A diet chronically high in omega-6 relative to omega-3 is a well-documented driver of systemic and neurological inflammation. The alternative: steel-cut oats or rolled oats cooked at home, topped with a tablespoon of ground flaxseed, cinnamon, and a small portion of walnuts. Cinnamon has been shown in multiple studies to improve insulin sensitivity. Flaxseed provides plant-based omega-3s, and walnuts contain DHA, the specific omega-3 fatty acid most concentrated in brain tissue. Item 5. Fruit juice. Number 5. Fruit juice, including 100% natural fruit juice. This one creates significant resistance because juice feels like health. It comes from fruit. The label says no added sugar. It says vitamin C. It says natural. But here is the metabolic reality. When you eat a whole orange, the fiber in that orange slows the absorption of its natural sugars significantly. Your blood glucose rises gradually, your insulin response is moderate, and your brain receives a steady supply of fuel. When you drink orange juice, you have removed all of that fiber. You are consuming the equivalent of 3 to 4 oranges in liquid form, and that liquid enters your bloodstream rapidly with nothing to slow it down. A 2019 study published in Diabetologia followed over 70,000 adults and found that regular consumption of fruit juice was associated with a 21% increased risk of type 2 diabetes, even when controlling for total caloric intake. Type 2 diabetes is now recognized as one of the strongest modifiable risk factors for dementia, doubling the risk according to a 2020 meta-analysis in Aging Research Reviews. The specific problem for the brain is what researchers call glucose variability, meaning the rapid rise and fall of blood sugar. These spikes and crashes stress cerebrovascular tissue, damage the neurons that regulate blood flow in the brain, and over time contribute to the kind of white matter damage now visible in the MRI scans of people with early cognitive decline. The alternative: eat the whole fruit. If you genuinely enjoy a drink, blend it instead of juicing it. A smoothie that includes the whole fruit retains the fiber. Add a handful of spinach, a tablespoon of chia seeds, and unsweetened almond milk, and you have a drink that supports rather than stresses your brain. Before we continue, if this information is helping you see your diet differently, hit that like button. It helps other seniors find this research, and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Item 4. Sports and vitamin drinks. Number 4. Sports drinks and vitamin-enhanced waters. These products have been masterfully marketed toward active older adults. The messaging is clear. You've been active, you've exercised, you need to replenish electrolytes and vitamins. It sounds responsible. It sounds like exactly what a health-conscious senior should do. But a standard 20-ounce sports drink contains 34 grams of sugar. Vitamin-enhanced waters typically contain 13 to 32 grams of added sugar per bottle. The vitamins added are almost exclusively water-soluble in doses too low to provide meaningful benefit, but the sugar content is high enough to produce a measurable insulin spike. A 2022 study in Nutrients examined the neurological impact of high glycemic beverages, specifically in adults over 65, and found that regular consumption was associated with elevated markers of oxidative stress in cerebrospinal fluid. Oxidative stress in the brain is one of the direct mechanisms through which neurons are damaged and through which cognitive function declines. The electrolyte argument also falls apart under scrutiny. Unless you are performing intense physical exercise lasting more than 90 minutes in high heat, the average older adult does not require electrolyte replacement beyond what a normal diet provides. The perceived benefit is largely a marketing construct. The alternative, water with a pinch of sea salt and a squeeze of lemon, provides genuine electrolyte replenishment with zero sugar. Coconut water in small amounts, around 8 ounces, provides natural potassium and magnesium. Green tea, which contains L-theanine and EGCG, both compounds with documented neuroprotective properties, is one of the best beverages available for long-term brain health. Item 3. Whole wheat bread and multigrain products. Number 3. Whole wheat bread and multigrain products. This item generates more disagreement than almost anything in nutrition, and for good reason, because the category is genuinely split. True whole grain products with intact grain structure are beneficial, but the vast majority of what is sold as whole wheat or multigrain in supermarkets is not that. Here is how to identify the difference. The glycemic index of white bread is approximately 75. The glycemic index of most commercial whole wheat bread is between 69 and 74. That is essentially identical. The reason is processing. Commercial whole wheat flour is milled to the same fine particle size as white flour. The grain structure is destroyed. Without intact structure, the starch is exposed and digested rapidly, producing a blood glucose response nearly as fast as table sugar. A 2021 study from the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, published in Cell, found remarkable individual variation in glycemic response to bread, but also confirmed that processed whole wheat produced nearly identical blood glucose spikes to white bread in the majority of participants. For brain health specifically, this matters because repeated high postprandial glucose spikes, meaning blood sugar rises after meals, are directly linked to hippocampal volume loss over time. A 10-year study from the Australian National University found that higher blood sugar levels, even within the range considered normal, were associated with significantly greater shrinkage of the hippocampus. The alternative, genuine sourdough bread made with long fermentation, rye bread with visible intact grain, or bread made from almond flour or oat flour with intact flakes. Sourdough fermentation significantly reduces the glycemic response of bread because the organic acids produced during fermentation slow starch digestion. Look for sourdough with ingredients that include only flour, water, and salt. If it has a long ingredient list, it is not real sourdough. Item 2. Low-fat and diet-packaged snacks. Number 2, low-fat and diet-packaged snacks. Rice cakes, low-fat crackers, reduced-fat cookies, diet snack bars. They're everywhere, and they're frequently recommended to seniors managing their weight. The logic sounds right, but here's what 4 decades of research have confirmed. When manufacturers remove fat, they replace it with sugar, refined starch, and maltodextrin, a processed carbohydrate with a glycemic index higher than table sugar. A plain rice cake has a glycemic index of 82. That means it spikes your blood sugar faster than a piece of full-fat cheese ever would. And for your brain specifically, fat is not the enemy. Your brain is 60% fat by dry weight. The myelin sheaths insulating your neurons are made of fat. DHA, the omega-3 most concentrated in brain tissue, requires dietary fat to be replenished. Chronically low-fat diets deprive your brain of its own building materials. The alternative? Full-fat cheese in moderate portions, a small handful of walnuts, avocado, or olives. A 2022 study in the Journal of Nutrition found that regular nut consumption was associated with significantly better cognitive performance in adults over 60, with walnuts showing the strongest effect. Item 1. Breakfast. Cereals marketed as brain or heart healthy. Number 1. Breakfast cereals marketed as brain healthy, heart healthy, or memory supporting. These products carry official-looking logos, endorsements from medical associations, and reassuring language. And they are among the most heavily marketed foods to adults over 60. Here's what's actually inside: a leading heart. Healthy oat cereal contains 20 grams of sugar per cup. A popular memory support brand cereal contains up to 17 grams. These numbers matter because eating a bowl of cereal first thing in the morning, often with low-fat milk and orange juice, creates one of the most powerful insulin spikes possible on a normal diet. And it happens in the first hour of waking when your metabolic sensitivity is already at its most vulnerable. A 2023 systematic review in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience identified high glycemic breakfast patterns as one of the most consistent dietary predictors of accelerated cognitive decline in adults over 60. One more thing. The words whole grain on a box mean only that the product contains some portion of whole grain flour. They say nothing about processing level, particle size, or sugar content. It is a regulated but deeply misleading label. The alternative. Steel-cut oats cooked at home have a glycemic index of 42, less than half that of most cereals. Add cinnamon for insulin sensitivity, walnuts for DHA, and ground flaxseed for omega-3s. Or try 2 eggs in olive oil with leafy greens. Eggs are one of the richest sources of choline, the nutrient used to produce acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter most critically depleted in Alzheimer's disease. The 7 foods on this list are not inherently toxic. The problem is the gap between how they're marketed and what they actually do inside your aging brain. The science is clear. Repeated insulin spikes drive neuroinflammation, and neuroinflammation accelerates the exact processes behind cognitive decline. But your food choices are within your control today. You don't need to be perfect. Start with the one food on this list you eat most often and replace it with the alternative we discussed. That single consistent change may matter more for your long-term brain health than most supplements available. Your brain built your memories, your relationships, your sense of self. It deserves the right fuel. Tell us in the comments your age, where you're watching from, and which food surprised you most. We read every comment. Share this with someone you care about and subscribe for more evidence-based content on brain health and healthy aging. Thanks for watching.